FC Waterford was founded by John Milan in 1648.
And for fuck's sake, Jesus Christ.
Hey, that's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some hurler. Okay, hello there, this is Rich from the Metal Cell podcast. I'm delighted to welcome Clive Bolger. He's gone frozen. That's a good start.
What a start.
Sorry.
Dave Cleere, how are you, Dave?
Yeah, just a bit of a back connection.
Alright, no bother. Brian, how are you?
Well, boy.
And we have Dave Longan as well. Thanks, Dave, for coming in as well.
How are you doing, Richie?
So this show is all about the Waterford metal scene. We're going to go back in time and try and connect the dots. And yes, we can verify that it had quite a metal scene. So I'll just give a few fun facts on Waterford. So Waterford City is Ireland's oldest city. The Irish name for Waterford is Port Larga, which means leg-shaped river. I could be fucking wrong, don't hold me on that one. The Vikings established Waterford as a walled city by Viking Ragnhild, the grandson of Ivar the Boneless, in 914 AD. The Norsemen enclosed some 15 acres of the city with walls and fortifications that were rebuilt by the Normans, and it became a cathedral city in 1096. What else? Oh, here's a good one. You'll all love this. The Christian Brothers were founded in Waterford. Our favourite friends, the Christian Brothers.
Thankfully, I have no experience of them.
I do.
I unfortunately
still have the
do.
fucking scars.
Jeez, sorry.
Yeah.
It's all very black metal straight away anyway. Anti-religion, loads of cathedrals and Vikings.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. So Waterford man Thomas Francis Meagher, is it? Created the Irish...
Mar,
yeah.
Mar created the Irish tricolour. You all know that one, of course. That's one thing. And born and reared in Lismore Castle, Robert Boyle is hailed as the father of chemistry and is most famous for Boyle's law, another throwback to physics. Back in the day. And E.T.S. Walton was the first man to split the atom and the only Irishman to win the Nobel Prize for Science. So there's another cool one. I bet you didn't know that.
here's another one for you. Jacob's Biscuits started in Waterford.
Yes, and bacon curing as well. Bacon and rashers were invented in Waterford. Imagine that.
Down on Bridge Street.
Yeah, so that's all my little stats. Dave, did I do
well?
well?
Richie, no?
Nah, I don't want to go above that.
Come on now.
Okay.
Rich, you forgot one important fact there. You forgot one important fact there, that Waterford is better than Cork.
No, they're not. No, they're not. No, let's not get on. What about, is Waterford better than Kilkenny? How about that one?
Oh yeah, that's not even a question. There's North Waterford anyway.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just Waterford with notions.
So, Clive.
Hello.
How are you, man?
I'm good. Just back from buying roller skates for my young lunatic, so I'll probably be going to a hospital tomorrow with him.
Okay. So we have you for a small bit here. I suppose you're the elder statesman of us all.
I'm
not going to ask your age, man, but you might be able to fill us in what it was like in Waterford back when you were growing up. Was there much of a scene there?
There was indeed, but it wasn't so much like strictly metal. It was like there's a band on, everybody went.
Yeah.
And there was lots of places to play, a lot of places. It was also back at the time where when you were 14 years old, you could get into a bar. If you knew the doorman.
Right, okay.
Which thankfully I did in a very famous venue in Waterford. It's physically still there, but it's been closed for many years, the Showboat.
Okay.
When I was 14, I used to go down there, I think it was every third Wednesday or something, to see Mama's Boys.
Cool. Jesus.
Yeah. And a doorman, the doorman there lived on the same street as me. And he knew my age, and he used to say, right, go down the back. If I see you near a drink, I'll be up to your father in the morning. You know.
And what were the crowds like there for, say, Mama's Boys?
Oh, packed out 300 full. 300-400, whatever it could hold back in the day. And I mean, from going to those gigs and seeing Mama's Boys, I got to know the three brothers, including Tommy, who is sadly no longer with us. And we always kept in touch throughout the years, you know. And to cut a long story short, I ended up doing some gigs in 2008, 2009, 2014 with Pat McManus just as a Dep. I was never officially a member of his band, but
that's so cool.
Yeah, it was great fun. What an experience! No rehearsal. Woohoo!
Yeah, when Mama's Boys are playing, that was what 1980, early 80s, was it?
It would have been 1982. 1982. Yeah, when the Plug It In album came out.
Okay. Yeah.
And then, of course, there was other bands. There was many local bands. The two rock bands, I suppose, around 1983, 84 were Purple Haze, were half Waterford, half New Ross. And then there was another band from Tremor who were called Dream Deceiver.
Right.
And then I formed my first band in 1984, a band called Task.
Right.
And we lasted for 4 years. And our biggest claim to fame was supporting Def Leppard.
Nice one. Where did you support them?
In a place called Katie Riley's Kitchen, which is physically, again, like the Showboat, still there, on halfway between Waterford and Tremor.
Jesus. Well, so, like, what release had Def Leppard?
Pyromania,
no?
It was after Pyromania, and it was before Hysteria. Because what they did, and I don't know who knows this, I'm sure many people who will see this video will know, at that time, their drummer had the accident where he lost his arm. So because I think 2 or 3 members of Def Leppard, definitely Joe Elliott, they were living in Dublin, they decided to do a 6-date Irish tour as a warm-up for Castle Donington, which became Download.
Oh, okay.
And they played the SFX in Dublin, they played Waterford, Galway, Cork, Limerick, wherever. And I, at the time, was 18, and I was a snotty-nosed little git, I suppose, and I wanted that Def Leppard gig, you know.
Jesus.
And yeah, and I got it.
So you were playing with Def Leppard on drums, or your band?
No.
Your band was supporting.
Was supporting Leppard, yeah.
Yeah, and was your man? Was it Rick Allen? Was that the guy that lost his arm? Was he playing with them after that accident? At that stage?
Yes, that was actually that gig that we did with Def Leppard in August 1986 was the second of 6 gigs that they did around Ireland. But I believe it's in the Def Leppard history books because it's the first gig that Rick Allen played without the aid of another drummer.
Oh.
Because the venue was too small for 2 kits. And I think Jeff Rich, who was the drummer with Status Quo at the time, he was on the tour with them to help them out. But I think he only ended up playing 1 or 2 gigs of the 6 dates, and they realised, no, we don't need it. Rick can put it off. We can do it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Jesus. And have you Def Leppard fans back in the day?
The guitar player and bass player were massive Def Leppard fans. I think I have 1 Def Leppard album. Sorry if any fans of sorry to all fans of Def Leppard or all members of Def Leppard. I liked them, but when they got very, very commercial, I personally lost interest.
Yeah.
But they were very nice to us. Joe Elliott bought us beer, and you know, they were so friendly and so nice. Like Steve Clark, who was known to be very, shy and keep away from, well, not keep away from people, but he was generally a quiet individual. We met him only for a few minutes, but he was very, very nice, very humble. But he disappeared very quickly.
Yeah, cool.
He just didn't want to be hanging around people.
And did the rest of you know that they came in through Waterford, lads? Yeah, Brian or Dave, and even.
Didn't hear about that at all.
Before my time, anyway. Just I only moved to Waterford a good few years after, so not an ageist thing. Don't worry.
It's just me, I couldn't care less. I actually have it. I think I sent it to Richie. I actually have a handwritten letter from Joe trying to help me get that gig.
Yeah, because back then, were you booking gigs just through, because it's all word of mouth back then, like were you just sending letters or was...
You book because you hear like your friends would be in a band or you hear of a venue, so you'd ring the venue. Some would ask you for a demo tape if you had £150 to record one. Yeah. And some people would just take a chance on you, and you played once, you went back, or you played it once and you never went back.
Yeah. The old Tascam 4-track recorders.
I actually have my very first demo tape on reel to reel. I actually have the original reel to reel.
Jesus, it's getting something that'll play it now.
Yeah.
That machinery is long gone. Jesus Christ.
There was actually one. I was in a studio here in Madrid about 5 years ago. I laid down some tracks for a band for just some rough demos they wanted to do. And in that studio, they had a machine. Now, it was there as a piece of furniture. It wasn't functional. But just to see it, it was like, whoa, let's do the time warp again, you know?
Yeah.
And like Clive, again, what about big touring acts? Would they normally just hit Waterford at all, or would they just go Cork, Dublin and Belfast maybe?
Well, in the rock metal vein, yeah, most of them would go elsewhere. Because I suppose Waterford didn't really have the venues. We had the Savoy Theatre, which Horselips played in 1978-79. That, unfortunately, is now Supermax. But what
about the likes of Tin Lizzy? Would they have hit Waterford?
Lizzy, no. I think the nearest Lizzy ever got to Waterford was they played somewhere in Kilkenny in 1981. But I did see Phil in his solo band in the Savoy in 1982.
Okay.
With Brian Downing, Jerome Rimson, Darren Wharton, and there was obviously no Lizzy stuff played. It was purely solo stuff. But I met Lynott afterwards, and he was very nice. We had a nice little chat. But I was 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, geez, that's mad. So we'll say when you finished up then in Waterford, when did you leave, Clive?
Oh, I left Waterford in 1990, and I went to England for, I think, a year and a half, 2 years.
And the scene when you left it, what was it like? Was it still vibrant then?
Yeah, there was still a lot of bars, and like there was the Old Rogue down on the Upper Market. There was many places that had bands, you know. And
was it predominantly cover bands or originals?
I'd say at the time it was probably a healthy mixture of both.
Okay.
You know, but what happened, you know, I mean, I was out of there at 1990 and I was gone for 16, 17 years. And what I noticed when I went back for a couple of years was that, yes, there's still a lot of bands in Waterford today producing original music, be it rock, metal or whatever. Yeah. But the small few venues that are left, it seems they want just cover bands.
Yeah.
You know, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
But there's a big student population in Waterford. Culture has changed. They don't go out until 11, 12 o'clock at night anymore. There's like only old men go to the pub for a pint at 8 before a gig, you know.
Yeah.
So that I think society in itself has changed. Culture has changed.
Yeah, exactly. So, Dave, I suppose did you start promoting down there, or Brian? When did you start doing gigs?
Very early 2000s. For me, I guess my first band was around 2002, I would say. It was a band called Downfall. We started out, there was 6 of us in it. It was all covers to start off because we were young, you know. But I don't know if anyone remembers Blast gigs. Yeah, they were a Dublin company, and Rob Stevenson ran them, and he put them around the country. They used to be in Cork as well, I think.
Yeah, it would have been a Kilkenny thing as well. I would have gone.
Yeah. So Blast started coming in regularly to Waterford, maybe like once a month, once every couple of weeks. And there was always huge turnouts at that. It was the height of the new metal era, shall we say, where, you know, you had Limp Bizkit and Staind and the likes in the charts. So it was popular. You always had like 300 to 400 kids turning up to these shows on a Saturday. Great scene at the time. And let me think, geez, Waterford bands at the time, Zenith, technically Kilkenny, I suppose, but they played in Waterford a lot. They were kind of a grunge band. They were pretty cool. And
were these all ages gigs there? Yeah.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. They would have been, and to be honest, you rarely would have seen anyone over 18 at it. Do you know what I mean? It was very much a Saturday afternoon kind of, 1 until 5 or 6 kind of thing. But yeah, no, it was really good fun, and I really enjoyed it. And it was soon after that I started booking gigs myself around 2003 or 4, and I might have done that for maybe, Jesus, I don't know, a long time. But it wasn't. As soon as the recession hit, I know I'm fast forwarding a bit, but when the recession hit, 2008 or whatever it was, things just dried up really badly. You know, it wasn't worth it anymore.
Yeah. And those people that were going to those gigs, Dave, they were all probably from Waterford? Was there Dungarvan or Kilkenny, or was it just?
Yeah, so you kind of had an influx from Carrick-on-Shore, Piltown and Kilkenny, New Ross, the close enough towns that could get a bus to Waterford.
Okay.
And they'd come in for the day or whatever as well, and that was mainly the all ages gigs. But I started running Murfest which was like, so how Murfest started, I ran for 10 years, and basically 1 year for my birthday, I put on a gig.
Right.
And when it finished, I just did it for the crack. But the lads were just like, you should do that for your birthday again next year. Like, I'm like, all right. And then so every year for my birthday for 10 years, I ran a show, and I didn't even call it Murfest. In the end, it was people, because my nickname is Murph. Like, so, I think Bobo was the only one here that probably knows that my nickname was Murph.
Yeah. Like, you were doing because now every gig is a fest. Like, every 3 bands in one day is called a fest. If you were doing it before, that was the thing, like,
Yeah. So, that got, like, that really took off as the years went on. Like, I remember.
What venue was that, Dave? Where was it on?
It changed. So the first time it was on was at the Glen Tavern, which was the pub next to the Forum venue. That was the very first one. Kind of a small little place. Clive, you probably remember the Glen Tavern, I say, do you?
I do, but it wasn't called that back then. I think it was called Fleming's or something.
Right. Okay. Yeah, this would have been kind of 2004, maybe 2005.
I was actually went back to England for a second time. And I was there for 5 years, and I left in 2006. So.
Yeah. So that was the first one anyway, and then, I can't remember where the second one was. Now, it might have been in Paul Flynn's, which used to be called the Kings, and the Kings was a very good venue in Waterford for a long time.
That was a nice little venue.
Really good. And it's a shame it went to the wayside, really. But Paul Flynn, actually, fair play to him. He was former hurler.
I was going to say, I heard of Paul Flynn. Yeah,
and he owned the place, and you wouldn't have expected a hurler. Pub to have metal lads in, but he saw the money coming in. So Paul Flynn's became a bit of a hotbed as well for gigs, nearly every week, every Friday and Saturday. Bobo will attest to that, I think. Yeah, that there was good crowds down there.
Jesus, that's mad. And what about I suppose you kind of associate Waterford as well with the freewheelers.
I remember when they started.
You could probably name them, could you, Clive?
Well, as far as I remember, the founding members, I mean, I don't know all of them, but there was Blue O'Shea and Claudio Gianni. Claudio's father was Italian, and they lived. I'm originally from Lisduggan in Waterford, and Claudio's from Belvedere, which is basically across the road. And we were 10. And we had trolleys. And lads, I'm not talking about supermarket trolleys now. I'm talking about a big lump of wood and the wheels of your sister's pram.
Yeah, tricycles. Yeah.
And hammer all the wheels onto a plank of wood and then kill yourself on the street. Yeah, and I remember going over and seeing all these Harley Davidsons, and I was 10 years old, and then the lads would give us advice on how to build the trolleys, and because they were neighbours and you saw them across the street. So that was 40 years ago,
Yeah. But you'd always wonder then, like with the freewheelers, did they get any gigs going themselves? Were they kind of?
They used to. Yeah. There's a pub in Waterford called the Cleere.
Still there.
Yeah, I know that. That was actually near my first house in Waterford. Yeah,
it's actually where I played my first gig. And but the freewheelers used to do a blues night up there. I think on a Tuesday or Wednesday, and they'd have bands from all over the country come and play. There was a blues and rock, and I remember one night I was there, and all the bikes were outside, and somebody came in, said, "Lads, there's somebody at the touching the bikes," and they all legged it outside, thinking there's somebody after taking a bike, touching or damaging the bike. No, there was 3 kids outside standing there looking at the bikes like this.
Jesus.
Yeah.
The boys went out for fucking war, like.
Oh, yeah, they went out.
I can attest to that never stopped anyway.
But yeah, they used to run regular gigs, and then they had the bike show, which ended up, I think, being held in the city centre, but they used to do it out in the Sweep in Kilmeaden.
Okay.
And I think Bono actually went down one time with Larry, and the 2 lads bought Harley Davidsons from the freewheelers.
Oh.
But yeah, there's photos and stuff about that on the net.
Jeez.
We hope they fleeced him on the price anyway. There's definitely money going like.
So, like, Brian, you would have probably worked in pubs frequented by the freewheelers, and they were.
Yeah, like it's a good few years later, so I suppose probably a sea change in culture. Like I was a blow into Waterford, so I would have been there for like a lot of the blast days. I would have arrived around the time, say, the Paul Flynn's gigs were happening. Murph was talking about there.
Yeah.
I ended up working in Murphy's, which was the Hog's Head.
Yeah.
By then, a lot of the kind of bikers, say the guys he's talking about, founder, would have been kind of family event at this stage. So the culture was still there. Like it was mostly still blues rock. So I mean, they didn't really have much to do with metal anymore. But you'd still have a large turnout for anything. There'd be things in the clubhouse. They'd have gigs. And their tour runs, like basically any like kind of bike shows. There'd obviously be bands at mostly blues rock scene again, because that's mostly where the biker culture is. Murphy still ran gigs, not too many metal ones realistically.
Yeah, very small.
But they were still supportive. It's funny enough, like I won't name too many names because you know the biker culture, like you just don't say too much. But like some of the MCCs definitely helped out with like raves, like say electronic music and kind of underground gigs that way. So they'd let the clubhouses happen, like gigs happen there. Just provide their own security basically, and what happens.
Yeah.
So different genre, but still the same vibe, you know.
Right, can I ask you, were you working in Murph's or were you around Waterford in 2014?
I left Murphy's in 2011, I think. And then, I moved to Cork around 2012. So, nothing against Waterford, but I'm sure we'll touch on the recession stuff later, but it's just the way the town went, you know.
No, the reason I'm just looking at you there thinking, I'm trying to place you in a place, if you know what I mean. Because I did a gig in Murph's in 2014, and again going back to the Mamas Boys little connection, it was a bit of a favour from Pat McManus at the time. He had come down to Waterford to play in the Wama Music School out on the Dunmore Road to do a gig for kids on a Friday evening with his band, and it was great. The place was full of 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, just didn't have a notion of who they were watching, but they loved it. And I had a bit of a chat with Pat beforehand, and Ger Burke asked me to ask Pat for a favour. So between the jigs and the reels, and I'm not going into details, and I'm not going to bore the hell off you. But Pat came in after his gig with his band, and me and a bass player that I roped in from Waterford, we went into Murphy's for a jam.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, like between myself and Ger Burke, we were saying, you know, an hour will be fine. No, not with Pat. Pat turns it into a 2-hour gig.
Jesus.
You know, and he even brought his acoustic with him, so we could go for a wee or a cigarette or whatever. And he did a couple of acoustic songs.
Fucking hell.
And I'm thinking, this man is mad. You know, he's just driven down from Fermanagh. He's just on a 2-hour gig with his band. And then he's coming in here and doing another 2 hours. And then he drives home.
Yeah.
Oh.
But I have 2 videos of that, but they were filmed by a chap that I know who had a few beers in him that night, and I only have them on Facebook, so they were never made public.
They're on shaking cam.
The videos were held sideways, you know.
Yeah.
But doesn't do wonders for your head when you're watching it. But that was great. You know, we just played covers, and we played one Mama's Voice song, the classic "Needle in the Groove."
Yeah.
But we played Murph's, and Murph's is very small, you know, but cozy at the same time.
So there's a school of music in Waterford, lads, is there?
There is, yeah, but they also, I mean, they teach all instruments, they teach singing, but they also have dance, and they do some acting, they do everything.
Yeah, it's a really impressive place. I've been out there. They have rehearsal rooms out there as well.
Yeah.
And you know, it's and I have loads of friends actually working there teaching too.
Trevor Darmody owns it, no?
Yes,
Trev, yeah.
And they have been from Waterford, or been from Dungarvan, I should say. How aware were you of the scene? You're fairly younger
so
than the rest of the boys.
So actually, I have the kind of bad short-term memory, but I have the benefits of Facebook from my era. So I was able to actually look up stuff. So like my main kind of time there was maybe like 2014, 2015 kind of, 2013 to maybe 2015. And my experience of it would have mostly been centered around a thing that was going at the time called Dole City Punks, which was running in what was then called the Red Kettle Theatre, and it was then called Central Arts. But basically what it was there was nothing in Dungarvan. There's always kind of not been a whole lot of original music scene around Dungarvan, and
it's more trad, I'd say, is it?
Yeah, kind of trad more, but like I get a big focus on covers, bands and stuff like that. Like pretty much any young band that start down there, they get the whole, do a couple of covers and throw in a few original songs, and see how it goes kind of approach to things. But I was making friends with people who were in Ardmore, sorry. And they were kind of telling me, there's these gigs that go on up there that are like all ages and stuff like that. So, my parents would drive me up and I'd go see them. And it'd be like bands like from around my time, it would have been Defector and Provisions and N11. I think they were there called Broken. And it was mostly punk bands, but like they'd be people doing like, it was basically treated like an open mic thing. And I think the lineups were like randomized on the night. So you'd get gigs where like you'd have someone doing like a cappella pop punk covers, followed by a grindcore band, followed by an indie rock band, followed by a metalcore band. And just at that time it was kind of a fairly small scene, and it was all ages stuff. These are all like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. Yeah. But like it really kind of gave a lot of people a kind of thirst for it. Looking up these bands afterwards, today, I realized that like not many of them went beyond like 2015 or 2016. I think there's only one that's still active. But I mean, that scene at that time was all ages stuff. Because that's all we could go into. So, stuff like Sal's or like some of the venues the lads mentioned, like I never really got much experience of them because I went off to college in Limerick. But yeah, at that time it was a nice kind of little feeling to the thing and everything. And, it kind of felt like there was a nice little scene going to kind of give me a taste of it. So,
yeah. And was there festivals? I think I was at a big festival down there years ago. Bob Dylan played there and a few others.
That was in Tremor.
Was it Tremor, yeah?
Yeah, Ray Charles played, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those ones, yeah. There was a savage lineup there.
That was, it was unbelievable. That was in 1992, I think.
I think, was it your man, actually, from The Mean Fiddler was involved in it?
Vince Power, yeah.
Yes. So, like, I mean, Jesus, Waterford definitely at that stage, like, I mean, I don't know how many, there was like, I don't know what the capacity was, around 60,000 people at these things.
That was mental, yeah, it was mental.
Yeah.
I think it was held on. I wasn't at it because I was living away from Waterford at the time. I think it was up at the Tremor Racecourse. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Not sure. But the lineup was insane. I mean, it was Joan Baez, it was Van Morrison, the Chieftains.
I actually saw the Chieftains, would you believe? I went in to watch them for the sake of it.
I'm a bit of a trad head, so the Chieftains would be... I wouldn't mind seeing the Chieftains. I never saw them. Yeah.
But, so, like, I mean, there was a tradition there of big festivals for a period of time.
Yeah. But I think, as we were saying, or one or two of us have mentioned, apart from, I think myself personally, that every 20, 25 years society changes. And between the internet, I mean, the internet is great, but it's a pain sometimes as well, culture changes.
Yeah.
Society changes.
It's worth mentioning another festival that I'm trying to remember the name of now. Bobo, you might remember, but Napalm Death played at it and Primordial.
Oh, well, yeah, I worked with them.
Yeah, there's details we won't go into around that. But the fact that, Napalm Death and Primordial played at the Forum in Waterford was pretty cool.
Jesus, when was that, Dave?
2009?
2008.
Vaguely remember hearing about that.
Yeah. And my old band Orpheus played at that as well.
Yeah. So the story behind that, I suppose, was to pick up from where Murph was talking, say, the Paul Flynn's gigs. So when I moved to Waterford, the gigs were already there. They'd been going to gigs. Where was it? Drones was the name of it, Murph?
Drones, yeah, it would have been before Ball Flames, yeah.
Yeah, and basically that pub was putting on the gigs for quite a while, and you had a fairly decent scene. Like, we'll probably come back to it a bit, where it's like death metal gigs and all of that. Then it moved to the Bowery, which is now the Reg, I think, unless it's changed names. Yeah. There was the Forum. Music Lab moved over there for a while, but it was kind of a free for all. You could book a metal gig pretty much any venue. They're all very receptive, open-minded kind of bookers.
Electric Avenue, highly worth mentioning.
Yeah. Same era, and like you could have absolutely packed out, have your normal Saturday night and have a metal gig in the middle of it, like with all the kind of people that are not into that scene whatsoever, mingling with you out in the smoking area. They're just properly open-minded. The gigs going on from the Bowery kind of went from there. They started picking up speed, and you had bands like Raging Speedhorn coming down to Fletcher's, the same booker. That low-end festival went over 2 days. It was like, I think 18 bands, volunteer staff. It was like Little Dave that works sound in like Dolan's and Limerick now, myself, Cass, Mark's the guy promoting it, and I think that was pretty much all the staff for it.
Was there any Irish metal bands that are still existing now that played back then?
So you had, like, I know Thoughts of Ruin reformed, they played it.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of the bands there, you had Ghost of Medina, you had like some savage bands from back in the era, like
Drainland, I think. They were kind of a cross-punk band. They're not around anymore, though.
Few bands over from England that are still active, like there was like Overoth.
Overoth from Northern Ireland,
yeah.
Okay.
Like, I think basically what happened was just the classic thing where promoting is a thankless job, basically. The gigs were going really well for ages and just scaled too quickly. I won't get into the ins and outs of the festival. I'm pretty sure all the bands got paid kind of eventually and all of that. Like, but basically just scaled too quickly.
Ireland bet it.
Yeah. That was a big drama. Like back in that era, like Waterford was still a melting pot where you had bands coming down from Cork constantly. Five Will Die, Brugantine down constantly. They're still active. Like they were practically part of the Waterford scene back then. But that festival, that almost put Waterford, like it was on the map already. That was kind of the crux, that it got big and then it overscaled really because that was too big. Kind of ruined the promoter because it's thankless, you know. If one gig goes wrong, where do you come back from, you know?
Tell me about it. I used to book for a venue in Waterford, a short-lived venue in Waterford in 2009. It was called Twister Vicks. I booked for them for the first 6 to 8 months, and I actually had a Kiss tribute band called Hotter Than Hell. They're apparently Europe's #1 Kiss tribute. There's a couple of lads from the north of Ireland, I think 2 Italians. And I put a tenner on the door. And people were like, but it's always free. But not tonight. But it sold out. You know, it was a great night. The lads were in full makeup, and it was a great night. And we had a dry ice machine. And Richie, I think go back in your era and my era, we had smoke bombs.
Ah, classic.
the smell of the sulphur, you know. And you knew which song it was going to go off in, so you stood back.
Jesus Christ almighty. That's a classic.
Was the same venue that was like Baker Street?
Oh man, it's been about 10 different venues. That
and originally it was Harney's Bakery.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then it went on to be Baker Street after that. Big pub, like, and then it's been the Beekeeper, the Beer Keeper, sorry, and then like Twister Vicks. There's been so many different names on that place. Like it's just doomed to not work, it seems, you know?
I think it's because of the location. I mean, when I was booking there, a couple of lads in their late 50s and a couple of lads in their early 60s, even the Waterford legend, that is Skippy Sheridan, the drummer from Simon, you know, he came up to me one night with a couple of friends, and one of his group said to me, my wife wants to talk to you. And I said, why? He said, I haven't been out in 3 nights in the 1 week for 15 years.
Jesus Christ.
That's not a Waterford man. Normally
the bands you're bringing in, I'm telling you, I'm going to be bankrupt and divorced.
Well, that was typical Waterford, though. You go out for a gig on Thursday night, you get home on Tuesday. You end up sitting in the kitchen, like, you know.
Yeah. But Sorry, what have you mentioned? Electric Avenue there.
Yes.
Yeah. Just to throw into the mix of the conversation, speaking of metal and everything else.
Club LA.
I think it was 2009. Paul Di'Anno from Iron Maiden played there.
Oh yeah, played Electric Avenue. Yeah.
And
I was at that show.
I played support. Mick O'Keefe, who was booking gigs there at the time, he rang me and he said, "Listen, can you pull a few of your old friends together and come in and play support?" So we had 1 or 2 rehearsals and we went down and made a show of ourselves. But that was 2000.
Dave, you didn't get in for the support band, obviously, typically.
Obviously, yeah. It was actually
who comes in for the support band?
His backing band was the Metallica cover band in Ireland. Is Metallica or Metalica or whatever. They were his band.
Was Flash Murphy on guitar?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I've met Flash a couple of times, and I played with his Metallica band as a support or guest or whatever the hell, or the same bill in the Forum one time. Yeah, that's right. It was Flash's band. Yeah, different Dundalk, is it?
Yeah, somewhere up around there. Yeah.
And what was Di'Anno? What was the crowd like for Di'Anno?
Not great, to be honest.
It wasn't great. I think the venue lost on us.
Yeah, it would have definitely. I'd say it was lucky if there was more than about 30 people there. I'd say.
Oh, for fuck's
sake! That's weird and unfortunate because
I think it was about 18 quid a ticket, and he didn't go on until midnight on a Thursday night or something.
Yeah.
Something like that.
He's notorious anyway, contrary. So,
but apparently he's retiring.
Yeah. It's hard to.
Was it Clive? Do you remember? I have an image of him. Was he on crutches that night?
He had a stick.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. He didn't look in good shape, I'll be honest.
No. He has major health problems. But
I know that, all right, yeah.
I met him after the gig and we chatted in a tiny dressing room for half an hour, and he was very nice. He was, there was no I don't know, ego or whatever, but he just seemed just okay. But like us all, you read about these people, and he's not without his problems, and he's made a few statements that kind of are self-contradictory over the years. And if I remember correctly, and during that gig, when he had taken to the stage with the band, I think he was criticising Iron Maiden a little bit, or Steve Harris, and I thought to myself, well, you know what? Okay, you did your time with the band, you're out of it, but you're out here now making a living off of playing that material.
Yeah.
And you're still writing your name in that, font of that logo of Iron Maiden. See, it's either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it, I mean, if you have some personal gripes, maybe you should keep them to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. He was playing Iron Maiden songs, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I don't think anybody went down there that night to hear him whinge about Steve Harris. They wanted to hear Paul Di'Anno, the original Maiden singer, singing some of his other band stuff, because he had a band called Battle Zone or whatever, and probably play Running Free or Remember Tomorrow. And for the punters who paid the money to go in, just leave it at that. If you have a problem with Steve Harris, ring him up and tell him.
Yeah.
In your experience as well, lads, running gigs, was there much of a student turnout for those gigs? Is there a catchment area that hasn't been exploited?
Well, maybe for some of the lads, but not for me, because the gigs that I was booking for Twister Vicks, I had a band called Skaz, who were from Cleere, I think. They were an 8-piece ska band, and some of the members were from Cork. And I booked Rob Strong, and I booked again Pat McManus. And I think because of what was going on in Waterford and what I saw at that time with Electric Avenue and other places, they were kind of gearing toward the student and the younger, So I had a chat with the people who had Twister Vicks, and we came to this kind of agreement that maybe we should aim for the older crowd. The lads who come out on a Saturday to one bar and spend 25, 30 euro and then go home, rather than some of the younger ones who jump to 3 or 4 bars. So we were kind of aiming for a little bit of an older audience. Mind you, if you were 18 and you came in, you were welcome.
What about Brian and Dave, their catchment students?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, I think because it became such a close-knit scene at the time, between the early 2000s to 2010-ish kind of era, I think everyone just kind of knew each other. So, like, you know, as soon as there was a gig announced, people knew it was on, you were going to go to it. It was a night out, and that's it. Like, you know, I never would have noticed. I mean, there was always people there that I wouldn't know, but I couldn't have told you if they were, you know, a student or not. I'm not really sure, to be honest. We definitely advertised, you know, in WIT and places like that. So it's possible that, you know, but I couldn't tell you for sure.
Yeah, like I never found any overlap. Just I think the students kind of had their own thing. Kind of, there's a crossroads in the middle of Waterford where all the kind of like student bars are. You can stick two cops there, and all the bars are watched. Most of the gigs really were off the beaten track from there. Like you'd have maybe Electric Avenue in the middle of town, but otherwise the Forum's out of there. No there.
No contact.
Daddy can't come with you.
But the nature of the scene was very DIY, and that's kind of what perpetuated it. Because I mean, you get a lot of towns that have the means, like you get the likes of Cork, where it'll still always fall on 3 or 4 promoters to actually make things happen.
Sorry, lads, I'm going to close the door.
But Waterford was the same. I mean, it was always just 3 or 4 people would just kind of have an idea, push with it, and that would kind of be the igniting thing. Like, say, Murphy backed me up here. You had lights of Macker kind of setting, and you were involved as well, I think, with Underground, like the forums, SMDF, those web forums back in the day before Facebook and Bebo and kind of social media in general, where people were kind of talking through most advertising gigs. So that was almost like the central hub back then, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the community. Yeah, that's where everything was arranged, kind of, you know, during the week, or, you know, what are people up to this weekend, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, word of mouth.
Yeah. But online as well, like that's when, you know, forums and stuff were in their heyday before social media, like Brian was saying there, you know.
Yeah, like, something I can get.
I thought it was magical because I came from like the country where it's dial-up internet.
Before everybody became keyboard warriors.
What were you saying, Dave?
Something I can kind of talk to in terms of the student thing was, I think it was about 2018, I think. There was a WIT student, a fellow called Ben Hayes, was actually running gigs in Central Arts for, I'd say, about the bones of a year. And I think he was doing under the name Rockology. And like, he was a WIT student, and he was kind of doing it as a society. And like, I know ourselves went down, Carosa were down, just a few other bands were down. He just contacted, like, he didn't know a whole lot, but he kind of learned how to run gigs in the process of, you know, running them. But ran them for a couple of months, and they were really well, and they seemed to be kind of attended relatively well for, you know, especially like that kind of time period and stuff like that. And like, I think he only really finished up because I think he finished up in college, like he graduated. But, you know, like those, like, there was WIT students going to that were they coming in big numbers? Sure, look, you know, it's Waterford, like, you know, if you get any of them, you kind of be happy, like. But yeah, that was going for a couple of years there, a few years ago, and like, yeah, it was good crack. Like, and
who was behind the Waterford Metal Fests then?
I don't know about that, but I remember it.
That was in the forums, the likes of Warpath, Animator, Legion of Wolves. That was in 2014.
I don't know. That's a good question. That doesn't even ring a bell for me.
No. I think
I know. Probably Ben Cunningham.
Oh, you might have to ask Terry O'Neill.
Yeah, Terry. Yeah. Ben Cunningham, actually, I think.
Terry used to play guitar in a band with me.
Really, yeah.
Not a lot of people know that.
Gasman Terry.
I knew him when he looked like Slash.
But that was run by Cunning Metal Productions.
Yeah, that's Ben Cunningham. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think
Vader at that as well.
What's that?
I think Vader played at that as well, did they?
Vader played at one of them as well, yeah. Faroon, Animator, and Dead Label.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't in any of them. I think I was living in Cork at the time. So I had heard about it, but it just wasn't ringing a bell for a bit. But yeah, Ben Cunningham was the guy running those.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I always make the point to people where you age out of a scene so quickly. Like, you can spend years being the guy, almost like you could be booking gigs or a gig every week, or kind of that young fella helping somebody load a car into a van and give it 6 months, 2 years of not talking to anybody. You don't know who's running that gig anymore. Your fingers completely not on the pulse, you know. If I had to go to a gig now, I heard Central Arts, are they doing gigs anymore?
No, they're doing Central Arts.
They closed their start.
Closed. I saw something recently.
I know they're planning
Is it
the
up for sale?
organization. I know the organization Central Arts is like trying to. I think they said that they're looking for a new venue, but the building itself,
the building itself. I think the building itself is up for sale. I'm not sure. That's right next to Jordan's, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. In the alleyway there in between. Yeah,
it used to be the Red
I've never
Kettle
been inside
Theatre.
myself.
It used to be Red Kettle's Theatre.
Yeah, like
that's
how quickly we age out though. Like you'll just basically take your finger off the pulse for 6 months a year, and then you don't even know who to book a gig off yourself and call in favours. You know,
as we say, the cartoon is over.
Yeah. The Central Arts actually was a savage spot though. Like I remember when that started out, it was like underground. Well, not underground actually. It was through the Arts Council, but it was kind of like raves and kind of gigs going on there, and trying to work. It was basically like a church setup, like very reverby, and they're trying to set up like delay compensation between the bass out the back and just the logistics. Like basically, these guys are like scuzzy dudes putting on gigs, you know, DIY style. They're also there applying mathematics and physics to everything, you know. Definitely.
You're talking about mock-ups, are you?
Exactly, you know. And that's the thing. It's just like if we weren't into the music, we'd be far richer, you know. Doing maths and physics for a hobby, like.
Yeah, bear in mind, like these are the kind of people who also ran DJ, right? Like raves and stuff in their house.
Yeah.
So like they these guys loved it. Like they absolutely loved it. Their group is called Unts.
Yeah.
Don't think they're still really doing that, to be honest. But
was there other scenes? I think the rave and dance culture were competing.
Always. Yeah. So you had Music Lab was the techno scene very much so.
Can't say I'm a fan, gentlemen. Thank you for coming.
I would argue though that there is an overlap, and you can't really have one without the other. Like when I first moved to Waterford, like pre kind of broadband internet and all of that in 2005. Like I was coming from Laois with the bad internet. That was my first time of kind of seeing a lot of different styles. Because back if you're in say Laois, if somebody's into metal, they like Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and maybe 3 or 4 bands. And anything after 92 is bad, but their entire thing is I love metal, kind of way.
Yeah.
And then if you like electronic music, it's that other side where they only like taking pills and kind of it's just house music.
Different scene, yeah.
Not exposed to it. And then when I moved to Waterford, I found that I'd argue, say the Forum was putting on metal gigs. That place was probably staying active because they had the Music Lab guys putting on gigs week on week and having like the indie thing, like say, it's almost like treated like a rock bar, like a rock club where all the metalheads went to hang out on Saturday in a large enough place and a decent nightclub. We had to run the place to ourselves. And I mean, the Unts guys were the guys with a van. They didn't care. They just supported the scene regardless of genre. So
a van that was stolen.
Yeah. But they care so much, they just go and buy another van. That's their life. But
I don't know how, it's probably the most stupid van to steal because of how they had their design on it. It's the most recognisable van around town.
Yeah. I don't know how they actually, they got past the cops half the time with that van. But basically, Waterford was always about like, give them lemons, make lemonade. That kind of way. It was like, you would just show up on a Thursday to a venue to support the scene. You wouldn't really know what gigs on almost, kind of way. And for that reason, there's a huge overlap of people into any kind of extreme music, even like extreme kind of like hardcore techno that grew up on new metal that would still show up and kind of support metal gigs and support rock gigs,
Yeah, there was a lot of crossover. And I think something that I can't believe we haven't mentioned yet is Spree Festival.
Yes.
Yeah.
Spree always gave a chance to all sorts of music.
Once, 1997.
Yeah. And like every year, like they had a metal stage every year for a long time.
Wow. Okay, so where was it on, Dave, and who was running it?
So Spree is a bank holiday weekend in August every year, and it's run. It was funded very much by arts grants and stuff like that, but it's all over the city. It wasn't just like one place.
Okay.
You'd have outdoor acts, you'd have indoor acts, and it's when the Forum was open, they had the club there.
It's not just music; it's street theatre.
Yeah, it's street theatre as well.
basically 100,000 people come into the city from all around the country because you're allowed to drink. You were allowed to drink openly in the street all weekend, so it was just a proper session, you know.
Yeah, the guards never stopped you because they just didn't care really.
They couldn't stop all of us.
Too much.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But they hosted metal gigs as well, yeah? Metal bands?
They did, yeah. So again, they were kind of aimed at the all ages kind of crowd. Like they would have it on maybe the Saturday afternoon on one of the outdoor stages. And you'd have kind of like, from about 1 to 6 or 7. And you'd have like 5 or 6 bands playing. So that was always really cool as well. And they always gave a chance to all sorts of music. And so that opened, it was another avenue for metal and rock as well. So, and it's a shame that's pretty... obviously it didn't happen last year. It's not going to happen this year. And I'm hoping that they will be able to keep it going because, we all know how things are at the moment, and not just in the music industry, but arts in general.
My gear is collecting dust.
Yeah.
Actually, the other part as well was they had that parade every year and, the floats going around. Like residents, were on one of the floats, Fire Float one year.
Yeah, I was a part of that because I filled in for Graham.
Were you playing? Yeah, you were filling on bass for that, weren't you?
Yeah.
They got on RTE News as well. So that is probably the first ever piece of death metal on RTE News.
Yeah, that's
nice.
On the last 2 days.
Jesus, that's mad. So, there's still, with any scene, there's probably, as I said, the dance scene was running parallel to that. I mean, it was very similar in Cork as well, with Sir Henry's and the dance scene. It actually took over.
Jesus.
Yeah, it took over more so, and metalers just fucking left or just stopped playing, because it just became one of the biggest scenes in Europe, I would say, at the time. But Waterford always struck me as a place that loved its dance music as well.
Oh, yeah, it still does. It's obviously, no gigs over last year or whatever, but even up to last year, there was still acts passing through and playing in the clubs,
Yeah.
You have to remember as well, the second biggest radio station in the area is Beat 102, 103, which is that would be the radio station I was listening to going to school, and they'd have a load of 90s dance music going 8:30 in the morning. It's very much a part of that whole region, is that kind of dance music thing. So
that almost segues as well, because the whole idea, because Waterford was always just, like we're saying, lemons, lemonade. It was always very DIY, just kind of a few people just kind of making things happen. But metal hurts. You were in that, weren't you?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, they had the only pirate metal radio station in the country.
Yeah, that's true. That was around 2008 or 9 we started that. It was myself, Macker, and maybe I think it was Cass. We just started. The three of us, we just started. We got an antenna, various gear. I won't get into the details of that, but we set up in one of the lads' flat, and every weekend, we'd run the show Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. That's we'd kind of let music just play. Actually, no, sorry. When we started out, we only did a show for a few hours across the weekend, but eventually it got to a point where we would leave. It would just play a playlist for the entire weekend, but then people would have shows in the nighttime.
Right.
And it was really, it was an interesting time. I got some really great opportunities out of it because we managed to somehow get MCD to give us credentials to go and interview bands that were coming into Dublin. Nice. So I've interviewed the likes of, Chris Adler from Lamb of God. I've interviewed Frederick Akeson from Opeth. Loads of people. It's mad the opportunities you got. I interviewed Rex Brown.
Jesus.
That was the pinnacle of anything, because Rex Brown is one of my bass idols.
Yeah. Nice to think of that, Brian. Jesus Christ, they forgets then about the pirate.
He went to interview What's in the Ocean in Cork because you were just able to kind of go we're a metal radio station, and then they brought you out to Manchester to a gig.
Yeah, we became good. We're still good friends to this day. Three of the boys that were in the Ocean at the time are in Coil Guns now, and they passed through Cork a bunch. I booked them for their gigs there years ago, and Baylor did a tour with them a couple of times. So the connections you make from these things is really, really kind of cool. You're right. That did slip my mind about metal arts. Completely slipped my mind. It's just as well you said it, but it was a really cool time. And actually that turned into Open Tempo FM, which is still running to this day. Not really a metal, station anymore, but they're running constantly 24/7, and they're doing really well. yeah, I don't know, but it was great to do metal. Like, I mean, it's so funny. I remember the first night we went on air, and Macker had a contact in, I think it was in Beat, and he got a message off your man saying, "Found where you are." Like, within an hour, he found where we were. Like, so, like, obviously, he wasn't going to say anything to anyone. Like, but yeah, but I always remember it as a comrade. You know, these are the guys that I hunt down the pirate radio stations and whatever. Yeah. So, like, I remember when we were going on air, I think Macro was going to do the first show on some Friday evening, 6 o'clock. So what he decided to do was queue up like a half hour's worth of music and run down and get a bit of food in the takeaway around the corner. Like, and while he was doing that, he got a call from your man in Beat. I don't know if I should say this, actually. I don't know who might see it.
Go on.
But we won't give any names. So he gets a call anyway, and he's like, you know, are you on air right now? Like, he's like, yeah, well, what's the story? It's like, comrades are down basically, and they're triangulating on you at the moment. Like, so he knew, and he gave us the tip. Like, and we were lucky because the lads and comrades only stopped to get a bit of food as well. So only for the fact that we got the call and we got it down just in time, the aerial, we shut it down. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But absolute gas times. Like,
it's like I'm saying, if we weren't into music, for the amount of skill sets you're putting, where people are putting on a radio station from scratch, working out all the technology, physics, because there's a system you could just break down and it's not connected to anything in the room. There's nothing to be found. It was just like, if we'd be dangerous if we're actually trying to do something to make money.
I will say it's something that I've kind of found.
Actually, just to cut in, speaking of pirate radio stations, when I was a kid, I remember when WLR was a pirate radio station. Yeah. And their rival at the time in Waterford
ABC, was it?
ABC, yeah.
Yeah.
We used to broadcast from a caravan somewhere out in the sticks. And I remember a story, I can't remember which DJ, because I knew quite a few of them. The guards would come around and smash all their equipment.
Yeah.
And one of the lads had a battery, I think it was a car battery, and he remembers running across the field and all the acid from the battery going onto his jeans and burning his legs.
Jesus.
And what's his name? Stuart. What's his name? He's the editor of the editor of Hot Press. He's an English chap, but he's lived in Waterford. Well, he lived in Ireland for 40 years. He was actually a DJ on ABC Radio in Waterford. And now I think he's the assistant editor of Hot Press.
Yeah.
Stuart Clark.
Okay. Jeez.
Everything starts somewhere, you know.
Yeah. What were you saying, Dave?
Something that I've kind of noticed is kind of just an unusual kind of a trend is that I've noticed that Waterford people tend to pop up in kind of the technical aspects of the scene almost all over the place. Like, the amount of times I've gone to, like, say if it's like I was involved in like music societies or whatever like that, and we go somewhere and no one that you're talking to in terms of like the creative side stuff is from Waterford, but then you mention the sound guy, like, hears their accent and goes, "Oh well, boy, what's the crack? How are you getting on?" Like, and it just immediately pops up. Yeah, but just but like it kind of seems to pop up all over the place. I've kind of joked for years that like Waterford people are secretly like holding the whole scene together from like the backgrounds, kind of.
They love fiddling with wires.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's no coincidence that like electronic music, even like it's so big there, because I mean that does involve a lot of technical skill.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like when you left, then Dave and Brian, what way was the scene at that stage?
Pretty good, actually. So we were in a band called the Great Ocean Divide at the time. We were a 3-piece instrumental band. So, like, I think it was just, I mean, you had bands coming in, like, and So We Watch From Afar played there a bit, and you had, like, No Spill Blood from Dublin. They passed through quite a bit as well.
Melodic Cadetship, Steve Untitled Chapter had just guests on their album, and the Sal's gig there, like, basically it was like glasses rattling off the shelves. There's so much low end, which is a lot, like, but just a guy playing a melodica over beats and drums, but Steve Untitled from Neurosis going like, "Yeah, I want to be on that."
Wow.
So,
yeah. But yeah, the scene was pretty good at the time. Like, I mean, I suppose it was still kind of, you know, mid recovering from the recession kind of thing. So it wasn't, you know, it wasn't hopping like it was in the early 2000s and stuff by any means, but it was still pretty good. You know, I mean, our shows, you know, there was decent turnouts, like, you know.
Yeah. It contracted a lot. Like, I think the easiest way to put it was the recession caused a bit of a brain drain. It was like a lot of people went off to go to college in Limerick or like, you know, kind of moved to Dublin or whatever. And whoever was left just had to try and make something of it. So we had people say, Kev Power, like he's playing, you know, City Chips, like kind of our Simpos, whatever they're called. Few guys running.
Greatest video ever, by the way. The Neil Sheen.
The guitar player.
Kev, yeah.
Guys like those and Anna McCarthy kind of just running gigs out of cells, but they'd have a lot of post-hardcore gigs going on, which is still overlap with metal. I mean, it's still heavy music, but it was a lot more inclusive by then. Basically, you just had to show up to support the scene, whatever was happening. It could be electronic on a Thursday. Next Thursday, it could be the heaviest of bands. Hands Up Wants to Die, like those guys. Barry Lennon from them ran the Ritter Collective, which was label, and so Watching Fire was on. And also the other guy running was Adebisi Shank, like Mick Rowe, the drummer. So.
And what about if you were a band, could you record down in Waterford? What were the facilities like?
Not really.
I've never recorded in Waterford.
Like I have Cormac Kavanagh, who had a band called Dukes. He was a guitar player. He had his own studio up in so there's a place in Waterford called the Jute Factory, right?
Oh, the Jute Factory, yeah. I grew up around the corner.
So the Jute Factory,
from it.
Yeah, the Jute Factory has been a notorious place for, you know, rehearsal spots, studios, you know, session spots, raves, everything that goes on there. It's a business complex, basically, right? Okay. So,
used to be just a factory.
It used to be a factory. But Cormac Kavanagh had a place in there that he had a studio for a while, and I recorded. My band Orpheus did 2 demos in there back around 2007, maybe 2009 as well. But I can't think of many other places that. And like Cormac's long gone now; he's living over in the States now. But I don't know. He is, he's over there maybe 4 or 5 years now. Yeah, he's living in Florida, I think.
Actually, I just told a lie. There used to be a recording studio down on Mary Street.
Okay. Just
off of Bridge Street. And it was owned by a guy named Michael Power. He's no longer with us. He died a couple of years ago. Very famous around Waterford. He was a bass player. He used to play Sunday morning jazz sessions in the Reg way back. And that was called Earth Sound Studios.
Okay.
But that was actually a rehearsal room as well. And his father owned the building, and it was an old mill. And his dad used to come down during the daytime when most of us who had a job back in the 80s, and there wasn't many of us who had one of those. His father, even though you had your own padlock on the door, because when you rented a room, I think it was £15 a week. His father would come down. He was retired at the time. He would come down and he'd clean up your room for you.
Okay.
He'd pick up all the beer cans, the guitar
cigarette butts,
the broken drumsticks, you know. Jeez. And they actually put a lift into the building one time because it was a two-story building. They put a small lift. You couldn't fit a person in it. But just for a heavy, like you might have a Marshall combo amp or a bass drum, and you come back at 3 a.m. from Sir Henry's in Cork or somewhere in Carlow or whatever, and you know you're gone half the day. But it was great. The lift was great. Mind you, a few guitars lost their neck in that lift because they slipped and they weren't in cases.
Jeez.
But that was around 1989 thereabouts.
It's amazing that there was Oh, was that Brian?
It's still part of the culture of the town. Like I always found Waterford, just because it's always a little bit left behind by the government, where the job prospects have always been fucking shit there. That's what caused the kind of brain drain I was talking about. But that's what made it kind of vibrant for, I mean, theatre, arts, photography, music, kind of DIY scenes. Just because it was almost acceptable to be unemployed there, because what were you meant to do? A few call centre jobs, but...
Just on the studio as well. There was Ruby Studios as well.
Yeah, I was just thinking of Ruby Studios myself. I remember.
Ruby Studios was mainly a rehearsal spot. They did have a studio, and there was some bands recorded in there. But no, I don't want to be offending anyone by not knowing who recorded in there, but I can't think. I don't know anyone personally who puts up out from there.
I know out in kind of West Waterford, the main studio people kind of think of would be Clay Castle out in Youghal.
Yeah.
And I know a few Waterford bands went out there as well. But,
I recorded there too, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's make it clear that Youghal is in Cork for anybody that doesn't know.
Across the bridge. It's across the bridge, lads. It's across the bridge.
We can see it from Waterford.
Like Waterford's always networked anyway. It was always, if the scene was vibrant enough, people would show up because it was always show up for a gig. Like Murph used to book a lot of gigs there when, say, Orpheus were going. So you'd have like Hero and Error and Red Enemy and all those bands coming down. You know, it was always a spot. It was always a spot on your tour. Like if I was trying to book a tour this week, now you'd be kind of just going Dublin, Cork, Limerick, Galway, Belfast, but Waterford used to be one of those places you'd put down, you know?
Yeah, along with Kilkenny, so they'd hit Kilkenny, hit Waterford with that.
Yeah. Like
Kilkenny, like the likes of Hero and Error, I know they play Kilkenny, so they would have moved on to Waterford.
Yeah, like I've tried to rope in Waterford a bit into our tours of Baylor. I mean, you played Central Arts once with us, was it?
Yeah, it was our second gig, and we supported you. Yeah.
So, like, I've tried to rope Waterford in a bit just to kind of, you know, try and see if it's worth doing. And to be honest, the gigs were pretty good. It was in Central Arts, which obviously we were just saying it's gone now, but you know, the gigs were good, and I'd like to see, you know, when gigs come back, hopefully there might be an option of a venue somewhere that things can maybe pick up again. But
well, I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but I think when gigs come back, I think the worst band in the world are going to sell out.
Probably. Yeah.
Everybody will be just gagging to go out. And
totally.
hug their friends.
That'll only last a certain amount of time, though. You know?
You'll get a month out of it, but it'll be a good month.
It's true.
Crucially, can Waterford host that type of stuff? You know,
that's a $1 million question.
There's definitely a venue or two that I could pull some strings in, but they wouldn't be ideal, I don't think. Not currently, anyway.
Personally,
we'll see the little lay of land. There's a lot of places are closing and stuff like that as well. So who knows who might pop up and you know,
exactly.
You have things.
I have every faith. There's always somebody that just wants to make things happen in that town. I'm just out of the scene too long to know the guy's name, but they've always managed to make it work in some venue at some point. I'm seeing a punk scene coming up there at the moment, even that, you know, will have an overlap, you know.
Like
Steve Furlong is usually involved in that.
Yeah.
The recurring theme of Waterford scene is just sheer stubbornness a lot of the time. It's just, but like, you know, there's stuff there like, you know, WIT applying for the university status, and I mean, like, there's not really any places in the country that have a university where there isn't some sort of a scene going on. So hopefully that would bring some sort of influence into it, whether it's kind of a legitimization to, you know, outside kind of elements or whatever. You'd kind of hope that'll bring something in. It's a case of, like, you know, half of Apenham's from Waterford, like myself and Chris are from Dungarvan. So there's always this element of wanting to play in Waterford and stuff like that. We've only gotten to do it once, and we'd like to do it again. And like, I know there's bands there like Meniscus, I think, have started up again recently, and like they're a Waterford band, and like I think it's kind of a case of you just kind of have to get lucky and find like the right people with drive who are there, find the right spot that'll let you just work away. And I think it could happen, but it's kind of just, it's sheer stubbornness and maybe a bit of luck, I think. Yeah.
What bands can you name check that are still going? Animator is one, obviously.
Yeah, Animator more New Ross.
Okay, they're Wexford.
But they've definitely passed through Waterford a lot.
Mexicans.
Yeah.
Mexicans, is it?
I know the Animator boys are great. Geez, I've known them since they were Heresy before they were Animator. And I can't remember when they changed it. Probably didn't change the name about 10 years ago, maybe. But like, I've played countless gigs with those lads, both when they were Heresy years ago and, you know, when they've been animators. Really good guys, and they deserve every success they're getting. Like, there's, you know, in my opinion, there's not many bands in the country doing thrash well, and they are one of the ones that do it very well.
100%, yeah, they're great.
They're really good. They're so tight. It's just incredible. So good.
Anyone else you want to give shout outs to?
Do you know, the horrible thing is, like, ever since I've moved back to Waterford, like, it's like Bubba was saying, you grow out of a scene so quick. Like, I was only living in Cork a couple of years, and by the time I came back, I knew no one. Do you know?
Now you feel like an old man.
Yeah. So like I still had friends here and I knew people, but I didn't know who was running gigs anymore. I didn't know the bands, all that stuff. You know what I mean? It all changed in 2 years, like, you know. So it's
absolute.
It only takes one pissed off bored person that needs to start booking a few gigs and doesn't realise yet how thankless it will be eventually, and we're laughing, you know.
Yeah, I'm going to name out a few there that I took down. Resonant.
yeah.
Was that Macros band, was it?
Yeah, I had a stint in that band for a while as well, yeah.
Okay. And Holocene Extinction.
Yeah, Holocene Extinction, yeah, I know a couple of lads.
Bestial Creation, black metal.
Don't know them.
Repentance, doom metal. No?
Doom metal was a big thing though, like as in you couldn't go to anywhere. What you could be in Supermax or just in Shipper on a Friday night. Everyone had that same down shirt. Everyone had the same down shirt.
So there was a bit of a doom metal scene in Waterford for a bit.
You look over my shoulder.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's a connection there. But like back then, like I was saying, that's why I suppose Clive, and Granchi and all those bands were down every 3 weeks practically. You know, gigging. They always got to turn out like.
I guess the last kind of bands that I kind of knew from around there before I kind of left myself was Provisions. I think, from what I can tell,
like
they
Bobby
finished.
and Dylan and them, yeah.
Yeah, from what I can tell, they finished up in 2017. But like they were kind of one of the last kind of, like, there was a couple of bands, like there was like Hayden and Lion Eyes, which I think were like mostly the same band. I think they changed their name as well again before then. But like the last kind of band that was starting to gain a bit of traction before I left was Provisions. And
they were quite good. They played with Baylor a couple of times. Yeah. Good band.
Like I said, all the stuff that I kind of remember from that time is under the Dole City Punks kind of name. So that whole kind of thing.
Actually, a band I definitely want to give a shout out to is the Back Row Smokers Club.
Yeah.
They're a funk band and they're great. So good.
And King Kong Company as well. But again, not a metal band, but more electronic kind of stuff.
Yeah. So with the scene probably gonna, I'd say probably maybe October, November, all goes well, there definitely is an opening for someone to be booking in Waterford because bands will want to literally play everywhere around the country.
Yeah, like I said, like as recently as like 2018, 2019, there was gigs going on there and they were doing well. They just didn't continue because the guy running them graduated. Like, yeah.
Okay, so there is hope, is the point.
If the venues are the big thing, I mean, back in the day, you used to have the Forum, which was made anybody. You could play on that stage, get 2 photos taken, and then book your next gig. And look, your EPK is done already. You look way bigger than you were.
Yeah, like, the Forum was my favorite venue ever. Loved it. It's just such a shame it's gone. Like,
and
it's a bingo hall now, no?
It's a bingo hall, yeah.
Insult to injury there, like, yeah.
Play the bingo hall.
But it needs the venues, but there will always be the turnout. Like if it's ever if you ever booked a gig in Waterford and the venue's there, you'll have a turnout.
Yeah, like and the main room, which became a restaurant before they completely shut down, but the main room was 1,000 cap. The big venue, like.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then the upstairs was 500 cap, and that's usually where most things happened. But like, I remember seeing the Fun Loving Criminals in the main room of the Forum back around 2003 or 4. And like that sold out, 1,000 people. Like it was a great night.
The Bridge Hotel.
Such a shame, you know.
The Bridge Hotel was the venue back in the 80s.
Oh, was it Clive?
Oh, that's right. I remember some underage gigs years later there. Yeah.
The Bridgetown.
The Bridge Hotel.
Oh, the Bridge Hotel. Sorry, yeah.
I was in the Metropole.
If you come in from Dublin or whatever, you cross the bridge, you'll see it because it's right
on the quays.
On the quays, right in the corner.
And the Metropole was across from it.
Across the road from it. I played there a couple of times as well.
Yeah, and Prodigy played there, early 90s.
Yeah, well, the Bridge Hotel saw everybody pass through, you know? I mean, there was one Irish rock band from the 90s, No Sweat.
Oh, yeah, I remember them.
Yeah. They
Heart and Soul, was it? Was that their fucking sing?
That was the big one, yeah, that was the big one. Heart and Soul. You can look it up on YouTube, lads. Yeah, they played there. Everybody played there. I mean, Something Happens used to play there. Something Happens were massive in Ireland in the late 80s.
I went to in Spiral Carpets down in the Bridge Hotel.
Actually,
there was around 12 of us.
Richie, do you remember the House Mark?
Of course I do, yeah.
Well, they play there. Now, I didn't go to it because I wasn't into the house markets.
Yeah.
But there's a story going around Waterford. Now, I don't know how true this is. It could be an urban myth. I have no idea. That the crowd are going ape. They were loving the gig. Everybody's having a great time. The place held about 1,500 people, right? And apparently, the legend goes that one of the members of the House Spartans got into the groove with the audience, and shouted, apparently, allegedly, something to the audience, "Get back, you Irish dogs." And then the whole mood changed. Bottles, chairs, tables went flying at the band. That's what I heard. I don't know if there's an ounce of truth in it.
That's the Viking blood in him still,
What, people just turn you like that? It's over.
Brilliant.
But,
yes, there's definitely been some moments right around town that is just legendary moments.
Yeah.
Can you share a few with them, Dave?
So, I mean, we've covered a lot. In terms of rock and metal, we've covered a lot. But there's some random ones that I haven't even been there, and they're like, but like 50 Cent has played Waterford. Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was
like that's unheard of.
What?
To be honest, like, I mean, who would have said that would have happened? Like, and like Fateless and bands like that have passed through.
Snoop Dogg.
I was at that gig.
Well, Snoop Dogg, where he brought a load of girls back to like that hotel out by Jack Mead's. Which one's
Snoop
that?
playing Waterford? He did.
Yeah.
And Coolio, I went to see Coolio of Gangsta's Paradise fame.
Yeah.
He did a show, and
I'll be mixing them up. I think it's Coolio. I'm thinking that was
Coolio. If Snoop Dogg played Waterford, I don't think the town would have recovered yet.
No.
it used to just be a haze of smoke.
Go on, tell us the Coolio story.
Coolio, yeah. So like that was in I can't remember what club it was now, but
I think it was
Herbie's,
whatever Herbie's was, Sheridan's. I think that was it.
Yeah, it was down from what's is it Muldoon's now? I can't remember. I don't even know what's there now.
I think it's called now.
The next place down, there used to be a club there. Oxygen. Used to be Oxygen. Coolio played there, and he I don't know, like everyone just went for the novelty. It was like 10 quid or something. So just go and see Coolio. Like, but he there was no support actor at him, and he was an hour late on stage. He played a 20-minute set and played Gangsta's Paradise twice.
Wow.
Absolutely incredible.
The slow version and the fast version.
Yeah.
Picked up a load of ones, went out to that hotel down by Jack Mead's, and then basically everyone got like there's some major drama there. A lot of people got kicked out.
Yeah, he had dancers on the stage with him who were absolutely from Waterford, like 100% from Waterford. Like. So yeah, it was a fun night though.
20 minutes.
It was a fun 2 songs.
Two songs, yeah. He had the audacity to not even play the Keenan and Kel team tune.
Yeah.
There was a day tripper there as well for a little while, again going off the metal kind of topic, which was kind of more of a pop kind of festival.
What was that, Dave?
There was a festival day tripper for a little while. It was more kind of a pop.
That still goes on.
Yeah, that's still going on, yeah. There was a couple like international acts did that.
50 Cent was one of the ones that played at that.
Oh, was that one? Oh, yeah. It was like the Kaiser Chiefs as well, and like who else did they get? There was UB40.
They love bringing in UB40.
Yeah, UB40. They'll play anywhere. Or they get UB40, probably a fiver. Fiver and a Marsbar. But
what it just goes to show is like there is a big love of fucking live music in Waterford. Always has been.
There absolutely is.
Absolutely.
It's an arts town, and always will be. I think because the government won't do shit for them, so they do it for themselves.
Yeah.
I was saying that like from the last recession, Waterford was still in recession up until like 2015 or 2016 or something like that.
2021.
Probably. Probably, yeah. I don't think it ever really got out, but
yeah, it got hit really bad, bad. Like I never saw so many places close down so quickly. It was just
sad to hear. Sad to hear because I'm out of there 6 years now, so it's sad to hear. Haven't been back for 3 years.
I remember
you would have seen it when you came back. Like they were still in the recession hitting like 2007 or whatever. Like that's a couple of years later, so many places just went under. It was tragic.
No, I was back there from 2006 to 2015, so I saw a lot of changes.
So you would have seen a lot of And I don't know, none of us know the effects of coming out of this. You know what I mean? So
No.
we'll see.
That sure is the whole thing that like Waterford City basically just completely shut down after 6 o'clock every evening. Like, you know, if you were getting the bus down from Dublin, you arrived down at 6:05, ghost town.
Yeah, but I mean, they pedestrianised it. I was down there maybe
There's no one living in the
3 or
city
4
centre.
years ago, and we just went on the lash, and we had a great time, man. Like there was some really good bars and stuff there. So it has the infrastructure, but it doesn't have what you're saying is the money and the people that are spending the money.
Yeah, it also doesn't have the venues currently.
The venues are the biggest issue. It's basically you used to be able to book a gig.
Yeah.
So they need a Fred's basically somewhere that'll just throw on anything for very little. And they've had a load of versions of Fred's over the years, but if they had the venue, the thing is any band was able to come down from Dublin, Cork, Galway, Belfast and have a 3-day session, stay in somebody's house, and that was just the culture back then. It was like they never really had the bars or the infrastructure really to do much. But it was just
Brian, what you need to do is
do something.
What you need to do is get Joe Burke into Leinster House, and he'll bring the money in.
John Milan.
John Milan. So we started with John and we'll finish with John Milan. So lads, Clive, thank you. Dave.
Oh, thank you,
Dave.
Cheers for having us.
Brian. Much appreciated. So look, I mean,
nice to meet you, lads.
You too, Clive.
It'd be fantastic, and there is hope. We won't dismiss it. There is hope that bands will want to play gigs, and Waterford certainly should. If somebody grasps the handle and says, "Yeah, we can get you down."
Well, I mean, I'm toying with the idea, Richie. I'll be honest, because like, I'm finishing my degree next week, so I'll have time.
Yeah.
Don't make me move back there.
Okay, so you've been listening to Richie and the Metal Cell podcast. Thanks again to the lads for coming on the show. Hit subscribe if you like it, and crucially, support your local metal scene. Thank you. Cheers, lads.